Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call to order the Monday, July 18th regular City Council meeting. Welcome, everybody. As a reminder for those who are with us or at home, we do have a remote aspect to our meetings, and both staff and members of the public may be participating in tonight's meeting remotely via WebEx. So the first item on the agenda this evening is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I invite you to join the council and I. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So we have a couple of fun special business items tonight that we're going to start off with. And the first is ID 1150, Park and Community Services Month Proclamation. And I'd like to ask Director Jeff Watling and his team, some of his team that's here tonight, to come to the podium. Hi, Jeff.
Hey.
Tuck it in. Sneak a little picture. Awesome. Jeff has done a great job of assembling a diverse section of his personnel staff because Parks and Recreation does a lot of different things. Whereas Parks, Recreation, and Community Services are an integral part of our community, and whereas Parks and Recreation promote health and wellness, improving the physical and mental well-being of people who live near or recreate in parks. And whereas Parks and Community Services strengthens Issaquah's identity by providing exceptional parks, trails, green spaces, and recreation facilities that reflect and celebrate community character, history, culture, aesthetics, and landscape. And whereas Issaquah Parks and Community Services fosters social cohesiveness and creates memorable experiences through recreational, arts, and human services program that provide opportunities to come together, promote social equity, connect social networks, and ensure all residents have access to these program benefits. And whereas Issaquah Parks and Community Services Department provides value to the local economy through increased tourism, attraction, and retention of businesses and residents. Meanwhile, the department strives to provide equitable human services to add value for all Issaquah residents. And whereas Issaquah Parks and Community Services helps to sustain and steward our natural resources by protecting open space and habitat, connecting people to nature, promoting the vital ecological function of our city-owned public land, and increasing our resilience in the face of natural disaster threats and climate change. Now, therefore, I, Mary Lou Pauley, Mayor of the City of Issaquah, do hereby proclaim July 2022 to be Parks and Community Services Month in the City of Issaquah, and invite the community to join me in thanking the staff within the Parks and Community Services Department for their service and outstanding contributions. Here you go, Jeff.
Mayor, thank you so much. Thank you, City Council. Wow, that's a lot. You know, the benefits that this proclamation speaks to is not at all possible. Being able to deliver those without the hard work, the compassion, the competency of an amazing staff. And I'm proud to say I'm honored to work with a team that is amazingly professional, amazingly compassionate, and amazingly competent in what they do. The department is really comprised of a very diverse set of professionals. We're not going to bring everybody here tonight, but certainly this team of all-stars certainly reflects and represents the department. Monica Negrilla with the Human Services team, Brian Bernston with the Recreation team, Amy Dukes in Arts, Rick Still and Danny Solver representing the Park Operations team. Again, just reflect the work and commitment that this department has for supporting you and your policies and serving the amazing community and residents of Issaquah. So with that, and with a big thanks to Tim Smith, rather than me yammering on about what we do, we thought we'd have a chance to take a video tour. A quick 2.5 minute synopsis of what we do and how the community interacts with Parks and Community Services. So I say thank you, Mayor, for the proclamation, and enjoy the quick video.
Director Watling and the whole team, thank you. If a picture speaks 1,000 words, the video is just 10 times better. That was so great to see you and your team in action. Thank you so much. Very nice. The next fun item this evening is ID 1036. It's Hall of Fame recognition. I'm going to invite Council President Walsh and our two 2022 recipients to join me at the podium. Welcome, Eric. No, get closer, Erica. Welcome, Erica, and welcome, Stacy Goodman. And we're so glad that you could come out earlier tonight and socialize with us a bit and a few of the other Hall of Famers in town. And really just want to embarrass you now by saying kind things about you again. So about your amazing contributions. So earlier this year, we added 2 community members to the Issaquah Hall of Fame. This award is based on values of service, leadership, and civic mindedness. It is our community's top honor. In the 2021, it says, 22 Hall of Fame award winners are Erica Mañas and Stacy Goodman. So this evening, I'll talk a little bit about Stacy Goodman's contributions and why she was an easy pick for the Hall of Fame. And then I'm going to turn it over to Council President to present Erica with her award, since we weren't able to do that earlier, and talk a little bit about Erica. Ms. Goodman, welcome. Stacy has been contributing in Issaquah for a really long time. She started off as a reporter and editor for the Issaquah Press, 1996 to 2004, and we're still mourning the loss of that paper. She currently works for the law firm Carson & Knowles since 2007, and she ran for city council in 2010 and served us from 2011 to 2021. In that first attempt to become a council member, there were many qualified people in the pool with her, including myself, that did not get picked when she got picked. It was really apparent the night we were listening to candidates talk about why they wanted to do this. She blew it out of the water. And it was so great to have her for 11 years demonstrating over and over again with her decisions and her conversations and her questions, her commitment and passion to this community. She was on council when we did our first ever city strategic plan, our first ever comprehensive capital financing strategy. She helped to create dedicated funding mechanisms to support multimodal safety improvements. She was here incorporating Lake Sammamish State Park into the city's boundaries, which was a really exciting day for us. She has also lived in Issaquah since 1989 and been a part of so many conversations. It was really hard to see her retire last year, but she certainly did an amazing amount of stuff in her time working on our council, working for the local newspaper, and now with her professional career also located in Issaquah. So Stacy, so proud of you. Very, very deserving.
Well, and the theme of our Hall of Fame recipients, and many times, is just long service to the community, and that is no different with Erica. She spent 22 years at the Issaquah History Museum, started in 1999. She was, in fact, the History Museum's first employee and grew it from an all-volunteer to 5 staff members. During her time there, digitized the entire Issaquah Press all the way back to 1900. Real service to the community, and something that I think we don't think about often when we think about our town and our history, is how important some of that is to be able to continue on in the future. One of the things Erica is known for is the downtown history hikes, the cemetery walks, the kids tours, the pub crawls. All of those were something that countless Issaquah members were able to participate in and really get a sense of the history of our town, not just from a abstract idea, but really being able to participate in that. And so I think we lost a good one in moving on to for culture in King County, but really wanted to take this moment to thank you for your service to the community and welcome you as one of our newest Hall of Fame members. And you didn't get a chance to get, I know, it's so pretty.
Beautiful.
And would you like to take a moment to? Great.
It occurs to me this is one of the few times I've appeared before council and not asked for money and also thanked you for money. So, of course, it goes without saying that I've appreciated your support through the many years that you did support the Issaquah History Museums. I was telling somebody earlier this evening, I feel very fortunate that I've been able to have a home away from my hometown. I grew up in a small town in Maryland called Jefferson, and when I first came to Issaquah, it reminded me a lot of my hometown. And so I just want to thank the community so much for this award and for embracing me as kind of an honorary community member. And I'm proud to be an honorary Issaquahan. And thank you so much.
Two amazing recipients for our Hall of Fame award. We're going to have a short picture break and take a 5-minute break so that they'll be able to talk with council members and others that are here if they didn't have a chance to before. So, City Clerk, if we could take a 5-minute recess. Hi, lady.
You gotta take a
Welcome back, everyone. We do have one more fun thing before the council has to get to work tonight, because this is a working meeting. ID 1209 is a special recognition of Ryan Reamy, and it was a Association of Washington Cities scholarship that he won this year. And I'd like to invite Councilmember DiMichele to come and join me at the microphone. She was present during the ceremony. And Ryan, why don't you come up as well? So the city of Issaquah recently nominated Ryan Reamy for the 2022 AWC Center for Quality Community Scholarship. We are delighted to hear that Ryan was selected as a scholarship winner. Congratulations, Ryan. Ryan is a member for the Youth Advisory Board and joins us today. And first, I'd like to have Councilmember DiMichele, who actually did attend the award ceremony, a chance to say a few comments before we hand it over to Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Polly. Well, it was my honor to be able to introduce Ryan at the AWC conference to a whole ballroom of about 2,000 people. There were six other students who were honored. So this is the entire state of Washington. And one of those six was Ryan from Issaquah. And all of the students had to make speeches. And I want you to know that Ryan hit it right out of the ballpark. I had people coming up to me for the rest of the day saying, your student did such a great job. And you did. It was fantastic. And he was urging people, the city council members from across the state, to do more to bring young people into their activities and events and deliberations. So I'm going to repeat what I said that night or that afternoon, Ryan, and that is your community is so proud of you. It was well-deserved, and we know that you're going to go on to have great success. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember DiMichele and Mayor Polly. I just wanted to share a few quick words while I'm here. First of all, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm so excited to meet all of you after meeting a bunch of city council members from across the state at the conference. And I definitely want to extend my gratitude to Mayor Polly and her team for nominating me for the award, since I know there were several applicants from Issaquah, so it was really, truly an honor to be Issaquah's nominee for this scholarship. It was an absolute pleasure to attend the conference, the AWC conference, with Councilmembers DiMichele and Joe. It was so much fun, and I really enjoyed the opportunity I had there to speak to elected officials across our state about the importance of civic engagement among youth populations. And I truly credit most of my own passion for civic engagement and my service-oriented mindset to all the opportunities I've had as a community member in Issaquah, whether through the Youth Advisory Board or as the youth representative on the Parks Board. I've had so much fun doing everything from planning Harry Potter nights to triathlons to volunteering at the Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank. I truly wouldn't be the person I am today or where I am today without all the opportunities Issaquah has given me, and I'm so, so, so thankful for the open arms the community has welcomed me with. I truly hope that promoting civic engagement among youth and ensuring that youth voices are not only heard but amplified within our government remains a core focus here in Issaquah. I think the structure that we have for youth involvement in the community is really a model for city across our state. I've actually been working with Kathy Jones over at the community center to sort of set something up similar in the city of Bellingham, which has been really exciting just to know that we're serving as a model for such a large city in our state. And I think we're doing a really great job here of making sure that youth are involved in their communities. As I look towards my own future, I did make a bit of a switch in my plans since speaking at the conference, and that I will now be attending Georgetown University over in Washington, D.C. I'll be studying international political economy in the School of Foreign Service, which I'm super excited about. And whether it be interning in Congress or advocating for important societal reforms, continuing to engage in service in my community, I'm truly looking forward to all the opportunities that await for me in Washington, D.C. After I finish my undergraduate degree, I'm hoping to move on to a master's program in international affairs or a law degree, and hopefully pursue some public service related career in either national security law or international development. And with that, I just want to close with saying I'm so thankful to have been a part of this community, even though I live in Renton. I really consider Issaquah my home. Issaquah is where I learned to ride a bike for the first time. It's where I played soccer and basketball through rec programs. It's the only place I've ever been able to hold down a job, and it will really always hold a special place in my heart. And I can confidently say that I'm never going to forget any of the memories that I've made here. And thank you all again so much for having me here tonight.
Ryan, thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations. And just to repeat what Councilmember Di Michelle said, your community is so enormously proud of you. Congratulations. Now it's a work night. The next item we have is audience comments, and this is the opportunity for members of the public to address council at this time, whether in person or virtually. Those who have signed up in advance to make comments will be called on first, and if you are joining us virtually and would like to make comments, please raise your virtual hand. If you're on the phone, that could be by pressing *3, and if you have joined by computer or smartphone, look for a hand icon. This varies by device. One option may be to go to the participant panel and choose the raise hand icon in the lower right-hand corner. If you are in the room and did not sign up to speak, I will ask for other speakers before closing this portion of the meeting. City Clerk, has anyone signed up to speak tonight?
Mayor Polly, no one has signed up to speak. We do not have any members of the public on virtually tonight. We do have a few folks here in the room.
Yeah, I'm just looking. I'm not seeing any raised hands from the audience that's here this evening as well. As a reminder, you can always contact your city council with written comments by emailing them at citycouncil@issaquah.gov. And now I'm going to turn this over to Council President Walsh and see if you've had any emails or comments that you want to summarize on any of tonight's agenda topics.
Thank you, Mayor. We do not have any comments on our short agenda tonight.
Thank you. So the next item of business tonight will be committee and regional reports, and we'll start with Councilmember Joe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Cascade Water Alliance Finance Committee meets tomorrow, and the Cascade Water Alliance Board meets on the 27th. I'm not sure what the agenda items are, but I will be attending the Finance Committee at the very least. The Mobility Infrastructure Committee met last week and discussed ID 1211, which is the digital engagement process for the Community Mobility Fund. And we discussed whether to include the trail projects, which we recommended they should be included, and talked about how the public engagement will be structured. The item will come back to the Committee of the Whole sometime in September or October as they work that through. The most important announcement, however, is that the mayor will be giving the State of the State address at the Chamber of Commerce meeting this Thursday, July 21st. If you're interested in attending, you should check the Chamber of Commerce website. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Joe. Councilmember Di Michelle?
Thank you, Mayor Polly. I have no report tonight.
Thank you. Councilmember Hunt?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On our agenda this evening, there are two items that are related to items that were discussed by the Planning, Development, and Environment Committee at our June 28th meeting, so I wanted to highlight those for council. On consent, we have AB 8370 heat pump program for low-income residents and AB 837, and there's also an additional one that's related with that, which is the heat pump distributor agreement. The committee was unanimously supportive and enthusiastic about this program when it came before our committee on June 28th and recommended approval, which is why it is on consent this evening. There is also another item on regular business tonight, which is AB 8404, which is the Issaquah Clean Buildings Initiative. And when this one comes before us on regular business, I will give a summary of a summary for council's consideration from our committee meeting. At our last July 7th Planning, Development, and Environment meeting, we discussed Title 18, our municipal land use code, and specifically discussed ID 1155, Land Use Code Update, Building and Site Design. We also had a number of other informational items in our packet. So we had the administration presenting us with new information about the ICAP, which is the Issaquah Climate Action Program implementation within Title 18 or as it related to Title 18. And we also had a informational item on the whiteboard list, which is the list of items that are being compiled for future consideration by the council that are related to Title 18, but not going to be completed within the scope of this current update. The committee asked for more information to be added to both of these items and that they be linked from the main land use code update page on the website. And for the ICAP, or the Climate Action Plan table, the committee asked that information be added related to Title 16, the building code updates that address ICAP actions. And then on the whiteboard item, we asked for information about a timeline for items, and we asked about a number of items that we felt conflicted with the goals and outcomes chart. So we will expect to hear back from the administration on those. Then on the buildings and site design part of Title 18, we discussed a number of components of that. One of the ones that we discussed was the building step back requirement. And in the draft that we had, there was a number of comments about this particular change in the setback that would allow you to do a step back after the first or second floor, but not higher than the sixth floor. So the committee really had a good, robust discussion on this, but ultimately wanted more visuals, more information about how this could affect the streetscape, how this could look from the view of somebody on the street, for example, to make sure that there weren't any unintended consequences of that change. And then we also generally felt that there were a number of comments that were going to be addressed in a subsequent update, and so we wanted to see those changes in another committee meeting. So there was a list of 17 comments, and some of them were quite big, like address climate action goals and building design. And so we felt that the committee would benefit from another touch for those items. So that was ultimately where we left it, with our recommendation to return to our committee once those items had been worked out. The next meeting of the Planning, Development, and Environment Committee is August 2nd. And then I have two other upcoming meetings. I have a kokanee, which is a very endangered kind of local salmon, interlocal agreement management committee meeting on July 20th. And then I also have a salmon recovery meeting of WIRA 8, which is the technical name of our watershed, on July 22nd. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Councilmember Hunt. Councilmember Ray?
Thank you, Mayor Pauly. The King County Growth Management Planning Council is going to meet next week on July 27th. The agenda has not been set, and that concludes my report this evening.
Thank you. Councilmember Martz?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a big old list of things to go through. So if you're watching from home, go get a bowl of popcorn and a tab or a Fresca and dig in. So I have, part of it is I did not have a report prepared for the Services, Safety, and Parks Committee last month, so I want to talk about what we covered last month. We had 3 IDs. The first was on board and commission consolidation, and we had some public comment. We had one member of the public who said, don't get rid of the cable commission because it'll lead to losing the cable channel, although anyhow, that was feedback. But the net of our, sorry, that was citizen input. The net of our feedback was regarding sunsetting the cable TV board. There was unanimous agreement. The committee concurred with staff on having the cemetery board look at having their duties taken up by the park advisory board, so it wouldn't need to be a separate board. There may also be a need to ask for citizen input on this topic, was suggested. And then finally on this one, the committee felt that another board that it might be possible to sunset would be the Sister Cities Commission. So we asked the administration to look into that possibility. The second ID was Human Services Strategic Plan, which had 2 parts, a grants program and emergency housing options. On the grant program, after looking at all the options, we recommended a baseline of $500,000 per year, plus a population growth per capita factor, so as the population goes up, the amount increases, plus a CPI factor as well, which of course is becoming more and more important this year. And then the second piece was this pilot program. It was very exciting. So the administration is looking to do a pilot program for emergency housing, and basically Motel 6 would have a dozen units become available at the Motel 6 here in Issaquah. That would be 16 to 18 beds. and that would be 2 FTEs of staff, total estimated cost per year $550,000 to $700,000, which is, believe it or not, competitive to other emergency housing options in King County. There was a question raised about ensuring that there's no duplication of services between ourselves and King County Regional Homelessness Authority. There was an ask to ensure that data is tracked and the program closely tracks outcomes. The committee felt that the proposal was a good fit for the use of the 0.1% sales tax that we've been collecting for some time. It's pretty much right on the nose for how to use that money. This is clearly a local resource for an identified need. It's a comprehensive response that aligns with the other human services programs, and so we agreed to bring this back to the full council and recommended that this project be included in the city's 2023-2024 biennial budget proposal. The third bill was a tenant and landlord protections options conversation in regards to the Arch suite or raft of proposed suggestions. Public comment was really mixed on this one. There were people who thought we should do all of these things. There were people who thought we should do none of these things. But the committee felt that the city shouldn't go it alone, that these were all things that if the city of Issaquah did them in isolation from other municipalities, it would just leave our potential landlords and rental options, people would just go elsewhere, basically. We also had a concern that the current proposal didn't really match Arch's goals in terms of being focused on providing more low and medium income housing. So we also thought that more information would be needed for how enforcement would work. There was some interest in advanced notice of eviction. So the idea that in this tough market, when it is very hard to find, where it may be hard to find housing, that people may need extra time if an eviction is going to be happening. And so we had asked the administration, Councilmember DeMichelle.
It was not an eviction situation. It was a increase in rent.
I'm sorry. Thank you for correcting me. Yes,
Sorry,
it was.
sorry.
Increase in rent, so that if someone was going to be priced out of their situation, thank you. Yeah, so we asked the administration to consider that. So that concludes for that committee. That committee will be meeting again. This month's meeting is tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. here in council chambers. We will be covering an ID on city facilities assessment and surplus property policy, beginning of a conversation that we talked a little bit about in the retreat this weekend. So this is the beginning of what will be a involved and potentially impactful conversation about our property, and wrapped around that is what kind of services do we want to have and what things do we want to provide, and so looking forward to that. There will be an ID on changes to our religious and cultural calendar, and then we have coming back, as I mentioned, this tenant and landlord protection options that I mentioned from last month's report. So that concludes for Services and Safety and Parks. The Puget Sound Regional Council Growth Management Policy Board, GMPB, held a meeting on Thursday, July 7th. There were no, we approved a deadline extension for the Greater Downtown Kirkland Regional Growth Center to February of 2023. There will be no August GMPB meeting because all the cool kids take August off. Sound Cities Association PIC had a virtual meeting on Wednesday, July 8th. Brian Perry is acting as interim SCA Executive Director during the permanent Executive Director search. There was a completely uncontentious and quick conversation about the Clean Water Plan guiding principles, where it was universally beloved and recommended that the board adopt it. And then finally, they will also not be meeting in August because the kind of cool kids take August off. This concludes my report.
Thank you, Councilmember Martz. Deputy Council President Hall?
Thank you very much. A quick one. Just that the Eastside Fire and Rescue Board of Directors met last Thursday, June 14th. We had a number of business items on our agenda, including appointing a new vice chair. So following the retirement of Sammamish Councilmember Karen Moran, I've taken over as vice chair of Eastside Fire and Rescue. Again, thank you to the board for their support. I guess we follow a line of Issaquah council members serving as vice chair. Mayor Paul, I believe you were, and I know Councilmember Ray, you have, and former Councilmember Goodman was as well, I believe. So we did that. We got a progress update on our new strategic plan, which I think you'll all be really eager to see. So when that's in kind of more of a document format, we'll be sure to share that out with you. And then we gave the board chair permission to sign a new fire chief employment agreement with current Deputy Chief Ben Lane, who, as you know, will be taking over for Jeff Clark later this fall. I will be attending the next Finance and Administration Committee meeting next Wednesday, July 27th at noon at our headquarters on Newport Way Northwest. We'll be talking about biennial budget development, so stay tuned on that. And as Councilmember Martz said, the Cool Kids cancel their August meetings. We canceled our August board meeting as well, and we'll be meeting next on Thursday, September 8th at 4 p.m. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Deputy Council President. Council President Walsh?
Thank you. I have a very short report in that the King County Affordable Housing Committee will be meeting next Wednesday at 1 p.m., which I will have to miss because I'm going on vacation. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Council President. The next item on our agenda this evening is the mayor's report. So first up, there is no executive session scheduled for this evening. NACO, Familiar Faces Initiative Leadership Network. So that is a mouthful. The city of Issaquah has been recently selected by the National Association of Counties, or NACO, to participate in the first cohort of the Familiar Faces Initiative Leadership Network. This is a group of county and city leaders committed to improving outcomes for individuals with complex behavioral health needs who frequently cycle through jails, homeless shelters, emergency departments, and other local crisis services. Issaquah joins 12 other county jurisdictions across the nation and is the only municipality that has been selected to participate in this cohort. The goal of the Familiar Faces Initiative Leadership Network is to strengthen the capacity of county and city leaders to collect and share data across local departments and providers so that jurisdictions can identify their familiar faces and align these systems to improve outcomes for our highest needs residents. Over the course of the one-year program, Issaquah will participate in quarterly meetings with other jurisdictions and will receive one-on-one technical assistance to help strengthen and expand our data tracking capacity. We're excited to join this initiative, and we look forward to looking for ways to better serve our community with a people-first, outcome-based approach. We have a little report out on July 4th, and the report from our police department is about fireworks that were confiscated. As most people know, fireworks are illegal in the city of Issaquah, and over the 4th of July weekend, Issaquah police confiscated 2 full garbage cans of fireworks. So thank you to Issaquah Police Department for working hard that night and keeping our community safe. The Summer Employee Recognition event is scheduled for July 28th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. It is on the Flintoffs property on Lake Sammamish, and please join us for a celebration of staff and their dedication to Issaquah community. The food services for that event ends at 2 p.m. on that day. And now, a couple of items on council and participation at community events. The Issaquah City Council will be joining several upcoming community events to engage with the community. You can join your local government officials at the following festivities. The Farmers Market, council members will join the Issaquah's Farmer Market on July 23rd from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Join us for shopping for your weekly produce, conversation, treats, and art at the market. This is our 130th year, our 130th year time capsule will also be on display. And in the Concerts on the Green series, council members will join the July 26th Concert on the Green, featuring the Kennydales. Join us on the Community Center lawn from 7 to 8:30 p.m. for music and dancing. You'll also have an opportunity to view the Issaquah 130th year time capsule at that event as well. Council members will be present from 5:30 p.m. through to the start of the show. Some other fun upcoming events in the community. There is a Chalk Art Festival. It will be in celebration of Issaquah's 130th birthday. We invite chalk artists to respond to this year's Chalk Art Festival theme. Happy birthday, Issaquah. Looking great at 130. All participating chalk artists will receive free sidewalk chalk and a ticket for ice cream from the Issaquah Ice Cream Trike. So please join us on July 26th from 12 to 4 p.m. at the Issaquah Community Center. And we are having a resource fair. Alongside the Chalk Festival, the City of Issaquah's Human Services Division is hosting an in-person resource fair at the Issaquah Community Center. This is an opportunity for residents to meet our amazing nonprofit partners and learn more about their services and opportunities to volunteer. These resources are geared toward families, and this event will occur July 26th from 12 to 4 p.m. And last is Shakespeare in the Park. Wooden O Performance Group will perform Sibylline at Confluence Park on July 28th, 7 to 9 p.m. This performance is free to attend and is the story of a modern, queer-forward Shakespeare folktale. More information is available on the city's website. And that concludes the mayor's report. The next item on the agenda this evening is the consent calendar, and it was distributed to council in advance. If authorized, the items on the consent calendar will be considered together and approved by one motion. The city clerk has made a correction to one of the consent calendar items. And city clerk, can you let us know what that is?
Yes, a few corrections were noted to consent calendar item B, the special city council minutes of June 15th, correcting the attendee list and correctly attributing comments made. A corrected version of the minutes was distributed to the council by email and is also on your desks.
Thank you, city clerk. Have the payables and payroll been reviewed?
They have.
They have.
Thank you. Before I ask if any council member does desire to remove any item, Councilmember DiMichele, did you have a comment you want to make?
Thank you, Mayor Pauley. On tonight's consent agenda, there is a Gibson Hall lease extension given to the Kiwanis Club of Issaquah by the city. I signed that lease as a lease extension as president of the Kiwanis Club. We have checked with legal counsel, and we've been told that this does not constitute a conflict of interest, and so I don't have to recuse myself from voting on the consent agenda. However, in the interest of transparency, I'm informing the council and the public. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember DiMichele. Does any council member desire to remove any item from the consent calendar and consider it under regular business? And if not, is someone prepared to make a motion? Council President?
Yes. I'd like to approve the consent calendar as, would you say, adjusted with the, yes.
Second?
Is there any council discussion? It has been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar as amended. Seeing no discussion or no indication of anybody wanting to have a discussion, the motion before the council is approve the consent calendar as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That carries unanimously. Now we're going to move into our regular business portion, and the next item of business is AB 8404, the Issaquah Clean Buildings Initiative. And the request before council this evening is to authorize the funding. And I'd like to invite Sustainability Manager Stacy Vin McKinstry and Economic Development Manager Jen Davis Hayes to make a brief presentation. Welcome, Stacy. Welcome, Jen.
And members of the council. My name is Stacy Vin McKinstry. I'm the Sustainability Manager for the city. Tonight, I'm here to speak with you about a new program that we are proposing for the city of Issaquah to reduce energy use in existing buildings and put us on a pathway to meet our greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. I'm joined by Jen Davis Hayes, our Economic Development Manager, as well as Perry England from McDonald Miller. McDonald Miller is working with the City of Bellevue on their Clean Building Incentive Program, and they're here to help speak to the success of that program as well as the state's clean building standards. Buildings are the most rapidly growing source of greenhouse gas emissions in Washington state. buildings and homes account for the majority of Issaquah's greenhouse gas emissions. Investing in energy efficiency is a cost-effective way that we can reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. Finding opportunities to work with buildings, though, in order to support energy efficiency and emissions reduction can be challenging. We are seeking $100,000 from the Sustainability Fund to support a Clean Buildings initiative. This investment would advance our progress towards the ICAP targets and reduce energy use in existing buildings. We currently do not have other programs in place that support energy efficiency and greenhouse gas emission reduction in existing buildings in the city. Emissions from buildings are from the generation of electricity and combustion of natural gas. The city of Issaquah receives its electricity and natural gas from Puget Sound Energy. And in the city of Issaquah, electricity and natural gas are responsible for about 212,000 metric tons of CO2 based on our 2017 greenhouse gas emissions inventory. This makes up over 60% of our community's greenhouse gas emissions. The solution to cutting building emissions lies in energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is one of the fastest and inexpensive ways to cut carbon emissions and other harmful pollutions. The state passed the Clean Building Standard in 2019 in order to address greenhouse gas emissions in buildings. It includes energy efficiency requirements from which the state termed covered commercial buildings that are 50,000 square feet or greater. And in addition to private buildings, this also includes municipal and public buildings, nonprofits, and places of worship. The current standards do not cover buildings that are under 50,000 square feet, that are multifamily housing, hotels, or other places of residency. The timelines for compliance under the state standards vary by the building size. Those that already are in compliance do need to complete certain reporting requirements and submit information to the state regularly. Penalties do exist for either not meeting compliance or not reporting. If there is interest, Perry is here to share more information on the types and costs of upgrades that are being implemented in buildings, as well as those greenhouse gas emission savings that we're seeing. In the 2022 legislative session, an amendment was passed to include buildings that are 20,000 square feet or greater, as well as multifamily buildings. Rulemaking is still underway for these standards, and rulemaking should be completed at the end of December 2023. Having a clean building standard in place is a key step, but it's not enough to help our city meet our greenhouse gas emission targets. Many of the buildings don't know about the requirements, and they don't have the capacity to work through the complex process. There's not funding or support to help buildings through this process. There are penalties set, but for many buildings, the penalties are less than what the energy efficiency upgrades would cost. And as I mentioned, buildings that are under 50,000 square feet or multifamily buildings currently don't have any requirements. There are other benefits too that need to be acknowledged about these types of energy efficiency upgrades, such as making healthier buildings by improving indoor air quality as well as comfort. Along with the passage of the Clean Building Standard, the state authorized $75 million for incentives for what they termed early adopters of the Clean Building Standards. These funds are available for those that need to comply with the Clean Building Standard, but they're also available for those that don't need to meet state compliance requirements, such as for multifamily buildings. Funds are available statewide on a first-come, first-served basis until they are gone. Some cities are already starting programs to take advantage of these incentive opportunities. There are other incentive and loan programs available for large building energy efficiency and greenhouse gas emission reduction. PSE has business incentives. King County has what they call the CPACER program, a long-term loan program. So we are requesting funding to implement a clean building initiative in Issaquah. This would be for an 18-month initial program with the possibility of expansion. In order to support our buildings in energy efficiency upgrades and take advantage of available incentives, the city's proposing a program that's modeled similar to the City of Bellevue's successful Clean Building Incentive program that they're running with McDonald Miller. The city would partner with a service provider to work with buildings that both must comply with the Clean Building Standard, as well as with those that are ready to implement energy efficiency upgrades on their own. We would work through the following steps with interested buildings. We would do targeted outreach and marketing of the program, starting with priority buildings that I'll talk about in a moment. We would benchmark where the building's current energy use is. For buildings that need to comply with the state law, we would assess where they are now and where they need to get to meet those energy targets. Excuse me. We would complete a scoping assessment to identify the improvements that are needed. And we would work directly with building owners to help secure incentives and loan opportunities. We would implement the energy efficiency upgrades. And then for buildings that are required to comply with the law, we would support them in reporting. Based on the information that we've obtained with Department of Commerce, as well as some work that Jen and her team have been doing, we anticipate about 50 to 80 buildings in Issaquah that need to meet reporting to the state, and that there may be up to 80 additional buildings that are eligible for energy efficiency upgrade incentives and loans. We're continuing to evaluate that number, but expect around 150 or more buildings that we'd be working with. We anticipate that this program could support all interested buildings. However, based on feedback from the Council Planning, Development, and Environmental Committee, we've identified a way to prioritize the program on who we would start our work with first. We would begin with targeted outreach and marketing towards public and nonprofit buildings, and particularly looking at those that would qualify for those early adopter incentives, so we could take advantage of those dollars while they're available. We would work with buildings that may be facing a hardship in terms of meeting state compliance. That could be a financial or capacity hardship. We would then work with buildings that are ready to do energy efficiency upgrades, but possibly aren't required to under the state law. And then offer these services to all buildings, both that need to meet state compliance requirements. So this is an attempt to capture some input that we received from the committee, but we're very open to refinement and suggestions on how we prioritize this list. We've also tried to structure it in a way that we believe hits some of the challenges that the Bellevue program has faced in terms of connecting with nonprofits or with building owners that might be facing hardship in terms of meeting the state requirements. So why are we interested in expanding this? Yes.
Oh, I wasn't quite sure if Councilmember Hunt wanted it to wait, but it sounds like you'd like to ask your question now.
It's on this slide, so
Okay,
if I
great.
could.
This one, okay, perfect.
Thank you. So on this slide, on the second one, buildings facing a hardship to meet state compliance requirements, this prioritization refers to the outreach. And so I'm wondering how in practice you are going to determine which buildings face a hardship, and also who's going to make that decision and how that's going to work in practice.
Yeah, I think that would be through conversations that our staff or our service provider are having. We would be doing direct outreach to all building owners within Issaquah and having those conversations about where their knowledge is regarding the requirements of the state law, as well as their ability to move through those requirements. And so taking that input in order to structure kind of our priority in terms of who we're working with first. My understanding, though, with the Bellevue program, who I believe they have over 400 buildings that actually have to come into compliance in the city of Bellevue, and they have not been challenged in terms of capacity to serve all of those buildings and help them through the steps. So we don't expect not being able to help all of the building owners in Issaquah, but we would at least do some of that initial outreach and work with the buildings first that are sharing the challenge that they face in terms of meeting those requirements.
Councilmember DiMichele, same subject?
Yes, just a quick question. When we talk about nonprofits, are churches included in that?
Yes, they could
Okay.
be, yeah.
Thank you.
Let's keep going.
Okay, great. So moving on to the benefits. So this program we see really is one pathway to help us meet our energy efficiency and greenhouse gas reduction goals for existing buildings. We anticipate just during this initial period of implementation that we could reduce our energy and greenhouse gas emissions in existing buildings by 5 to 10%. That's taking into account kind of the slow startup, that initial outreach and marketing, and then hopefully we'd be able to ramp up from there in the following years. We also see this as an opportunity to work with our own municipal buildings, our public nonprofit partners that need to comply with the law but lack the resources to do so. This program would also help buildings exceed compliance requirements. It's an opportunity to work directly with those building owners to help them go above and beyond what might be required under state law, maybe look at other clean energy strategies, decarbonization strategies that they may not consider if they were just to go it alone and work through this process on their own. We also want to help our community take advantage of the limited incentive and loan programs in order for making energy efficiency upgrades in their buildings. And then finally, we want to demonstrate that the city is a partner with both public and private entities in meeting our climate action targets. We want to show the business community that we are partnering with them to reach our goal, our bold greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. We were able to meet with the Environmental Board, Vision Partners, and the Economic Vitality Commission earlier this spring. The groups expressed support for this program. The Environmental Board had some specific feedback in terms of whether we should have additional requirements above the state law for those buildings that are required to be in compliance. Overall, the board did not feel that was necessary. They felt like this was an opportunity to really show that partnership with our building owners. They wanted to reduce barriers to participation, and they saw that some of the demonstrated results in other cities is that building owners were already exceeding the compliance requirements. So the options we have before you tonight are to approve the funding request, approve the funding request at a lower amount for our initial pilot period, or to not approve the funding request. If approved, we'll move directly into scoping out our work and into a contract with a service provider. This fall, we would begin that initial outreach and initial work on the program, and we'd be continuing to evaluate and report back to council on our progress, any challenges or barriers that we're facing, so that we can evaluate whether or not to continue this program but beyond the 18-month pilot period. So the recommendation before you is the approval of the additional appropriation of $20,000 from the Sustainability Fund for the Clean Building Initiative in 2022, and additional budget allocation of $80,000 in 2023. That concludes the presentation.
Thank you very much, Stacy. I'm going to ask if Chair Hunt, Chair of the Planning Development Environment Committee, would like to make some comments before we move into discussion.
Yes, I would. Thank you. So the Planning Development and Environment Committee discussed this at our June 28th meeting, and we recommended that this come back to council for this discussion this evening. But at the time, we also had a number of unanswered questions, and so there's additional information in the packet that we did not have when we discussed this item, which were added as a result of those questions from the committee. So the committee also recommended, as was explained earlier, that there were some changes that there be some changes to prioritization, and so those have been addressed. At least in my opinion, they have been addressed in this current prioritization. So the question that we grappled with most at the committee meeting was about how we could know how effective this program would be. And we felt that this was important too, because the ICAP, the Issaquah Climate Action Plan, especially in its early phase, relies a lot on incentive programs and voluntary programs, and so this is one of those programs. It will be ultimately up to the building owners to continue the process past the evaluation and actually do the energy efficiency upgrades, and so that will be completely voluntary. So we felt like that was important because there's potentially a big range of outcomes, including an outcome in which the building owner goes above and beyond the state requirements and gets early adoption funding. And there's also, on the other ends of the spectrum, an outcome in which the building owner does not complete those energy efficiency requirements. So that entire spectrum is possible for each building that goes through this program. So because of that, and because this sort of incentive and voluntary program is an important part of our climate action plan, especially in the beginning phases, we thought it was really important to get comparables to other jurisdictions about how this has worked in other cities, specifically very similar program in Bellevue, and we have representatives from the company, McDonald Miller, here. So we felt that there should be more, that it would be helpful to have more information about that, about the outcomes and about the number or the percentage of buildings that actually continue through the process, go through the permitting, and actually make those upgrades. One other thing was that we considered having this come back to the committee for another touch before sending it to the council, but these early adopter incentives that are available for that additional funding to do the renovations, that's potentially time sensitive. And so lots of other jurisdictions, lots of other buildings in other jurisdictions will also be competing for those dollars. So we wanted to make sure that this was handled in a time sensitive or, quickly, so that buildings could take advantage of that funding to the fullest extent possible if we were to approve this program tonight. The last thing that I wanted to say is this is a pilot, and so it's $100,000, and I think especially because of this scope of or this whole range of outcomes that I was referring to earlier, I think it'd be very important to get that information back for council to consider possible continuation if we are to approve this evening. But that's a summary of our comments. So we were asking for more information, but also wanted to make sure that the council could consider it as soon as possible.
Thank you, Councilmember Hunt. Stacy, would you like to invite our guests from Bellevue to come up and talk? Is that a desire of the council to have them make a presentation so you can listen, or did you just want to do it through question and answer?
I would be fine asking a question of them. I don't know how my fellow council members.
So why don't we invite them up to the microphone and start with some questions? And also any questions on Stacy's presentation as well. Hi there. So we'll start with Councilmember Hunt and then go to Council President Walsh.
Okay. I have two questions, and these may be for you. They may also be for Stacy. Whoever is best positioned to answer this would be great. So one of my questions was about the rate of success, or the rate at which buildings are actually entering into early compliance with the state law as a result of the program in Bellevue or in any comparable jurisdictions that you've had this program or had experience with.
Sure, I can speak to that. I can speak to the Bellevue, I'm sorry.
Going to get you to introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you, Mayor. Perry England, McDonald Miller Facility Solutions. So I can address your question first with Bellevue and then maybe expand it in other areas across the state, if you desire. In Bellevue, we officially launched the program at the beginning of this year, so in January. We had a soft launch late in December, just to kind of get the word out, sneak preview, and then we did a full launch in January. So within the first 90 days, our goal was to get 80 participants enrolled in the program. We overachieved that, so the interest was high. We currently have processed over 146 buildings through the benchmarking, which is the initial process of this establishing using Energy Star Portfolio Manager, for those that are aware of it, which is part of the state legislation, as a way of measuring where your current performance is at. So we've processed over 146 buildings through that initial step. Furthermore, we've already moved 7 of those properties into applications for early adopter incentive. So that's the $75 million fund that's available, which is great success, and those are the worst performers, as measured as 15 points or greater above your energy use target. And then out of the buildings that we've worked with, we've got 2 under contract right now in a formal energy services engagement to make the improvements. Some of those properties are in that mid to larger size properties, mostly in the mid-size properties that compliance date is out in 2027. But they understand that the magnitude of investment is significant enough that they need to get started now in order to meet those obligations. And then overall, we've got the rest, we have another 40 or so buildings that we're currently working on through the benchmarking process, and success so far, we've had 0 attrition. So from that standpoint, people are staying engaged, building owners are staying engaged, and we're moving systematically through the process that we've designed to try to make this as fun and easy as possible for property owners and managers. Does that address sufficiently?
Yes, that does. I guess one clarification is there are 2 of the 140 something that are in that next phase, but that's likely due to the current time, right? Because they haven't yet gone through the whole process. So you wouldn't expect that be the percentage that actually go through.
We expect all those buildings that, because there's 2 ways of becoming, there's 2 outcomes of the benchmarking process. Those buildings that are above their legislated target, and those require some type of improvement, some type of investment in their property in order to achieve the legislative target. And then there's those buildings that are below their legislative target that still have compliance documentation that they have to go through, which is a fairly significant lift in itself, because it's really focusing on business processes for energy, sustainability, operations and maintenance type practices that have to be in place and validated for at least 12 months period of time prior to the compliance date. So all the buildings, all 181 buildings that we've currently got in our pipeline will need to move through one of those 2 pipelines in order to achieve compliance. So ultimately, at the end of the day, we'll have 181 buildings in compliance in Bellevue is our objective. And that's just currently at today's numbers.
Okay, thank you. I have one more.
Go ahead.
That's okay. All right. So my other question is about the scope of emission savings. And so the question is, and this is one that I had emailed about, what is the scope of emission savings the city would expect from the program? I understand that there's a range, but just to give us a ballpark. And then I also thought it was helpful to put that in terms of a percentage of city emissions, if you could do that. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I think we estimated, this is a ballpark estimate, as we don't know where our buildings sit right now in terms of where they are with their emissions and what improvements can be made. We were estimating over this pilot period about a 5 to 10% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, which I believe was about 10,000 to 20,000 metric tons of CO2. And that percentage is based on our 2017 greenhouse gas emissions, where we had about 212,000 metric tons of CO2 from buildings and homes. That number will be updated later this summer.
Thank you. Thank you for the answers. I believe it's Council President followed by Deputy Council President.
Thank you. I have a few questions as well. Stacy, the packet and the agenda bill mentions, or the ID mentions municipal buildings and public buildings several times, but I believe the Planning, Development, and Environment Committee, when that was discussed, it was mentioned that municipal buildings would be covered by Department of Commerce. So can you better explain whether municipal buildings are covered in this?
Yes, I'll start and then Perry can correct me. So yes, public and municipal buildings are required to come into compliance with the law if they're 50,000 square feet and above. We would of course, work with our other buildings if there was interest. My understanding is that the cost for the scoping assessment is the funding that would actually be covered, and that the city wouldn't have to pay for that, or it wouldn't come out of the contract with the service provider. The city would still need, for the larger buildings or any public buildings, would still have to go through all of the steps to come into compliance and the reporting if we already are in compliance. Just that cost for the scoping assessment, there wouldn't be a cost for the scoping assessment. I will have Perry clarify though.
But that is correct, yes. The scoping assessment is at our risk for public buildings.
So if this doesn't pass as an incentive, we still have our scoping covered, is my understanding?
Yeah, I believe that's correct well, if we have a agreement with firms that are covered under the Department of Commerce's program that works with municipal buildings. So we would need to be in partnership with a firm that would do that work, is my understanding.
Okay. I'm really having a hard time understanding then how this has any help for municipal buildings, because it's not making any changes to the municipal buildings. It's not covering any of the scoping or audits.
Stacy, are we under contract with anybody right now?
Not to my
Yeah.
knowledge.
So I think
yeah.
what you're hearing from what Bellevue is experiencing right now, but you raise a good point about what happens with the two different sets. So Stacy, maybe divide it out into what our next steps might look like for both the municipal and the private buildings.
Yeah, so municipal is complicated, and there's a program at Department of Commerce I don't fully understand, but it works with municipal programs on energy efficiency upgrades, and there are a list of preferred providers for that cities can partner with, and as Perry mentioned, it's at risk to those providers to work with the cities to guarantee some upgrades. So there are two different programs that are kind of colliding under this program when you look at municipalities, if that makes sense. Maybe not, but, and so for this program, we would still, in order to demonstrate our compliance where we have buildings of the larger size, we would still be needing to go through the steps to benchmark our buildings, do the scoping, if we're not in compliance with the targets, and do the reporting. So we would need to go through that process anyway. The advantage, if this program is underway, we would already have that contract available to work with someone through that process.
See, Administrator, you wanted to add something?
I think at the very end that
Yeah, I
Stacy
think
got
she
it,
got it, yeah.
that absent this program, we're still a property owner. And so we would need to go through a process, but we would have to select a vendor. If we've selected this vendor to help us with the larger community, we won't have to, we can use this vendor for our own municipal buildings.
Correct.
Okay, I believe you had mentioned in the PD meeting that that was something covered by Department of Commerce, so
The
I want
costs
to.
associated with it.
The costs associated are covered.
The
but-
cost of the assessment, not the cost of the improvement.
Yes, but that only counts if we have a relationship then?
Well, what the Department of Commerce has is a list of vendors. And so we would have to go to those,
Their
to one of those vendors. Those vendors are part of the Department of Commerce program, please correct me if I'm wrong, with the understanding that they may get the business from the municipality once they've done the assessment.
Okay, so I may just not be getting this, but if we didn't pursue this,
Correct? Then
could we
would have
still
as-
go through Department of Commerce, create a relationship with a provider and have that covered without having to pay this $100,000?
For
No, but
municipal
ju-
infrastructure
Just for
only.
municipal buildings.
This
So
is
the
a
city as the
100%
property
municipal.
owner, under this Department of Commerce program, we could go to a number of vendors who are listed. They would do at no cost to us an assessment. So that's what the Department of Commerce program gets municipalities, is the access to a no-cost assessment.
This is other than municipal.
Right,
Your
so the
recommendation to me
$100,000
is
is
about
for-
others.
I get that, and what I had tried to get to in the PDE meeting and here is, how does this help our municipal buildings?
It saves us a step, in essence, because we'll already be under contract with this company, and they will do that assessment for us at no cost.
Okay, okay.
So if we were not doing this program, if we were not going to be helping the businesses of Issaquah with their buildings, and we were just City of Issaquah property owner, we would have the ability to go to this list of firms, which McDonald Miller is on, and they would provide the assessment at no cost to us. What the $100,000 is providing is it's paying for the businesses to have that assessment. The state of Washington, though, has this program specifically for municipalities that it says, municipalities, you get this for free because these vendors, I mean, the reality is there's money to be made here for these third-party vendors to actually do the improvements.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, and that gets to the point I was trying to get at is municipal buildings are mentioned in this several times as beneficiaries, and what you've just said is that we have this whole other path that we could go through that would also pay for that through Department of Commerce.
And perhaps our error as staff is that we're making too much of the ability to have access to the one company. That's all, that's the only advantage.
Okay.
So we're saving some staff time. If we were not doing the private business piece of this, we're saving some staff time of the city staff having to then identify a company to work with. So I apologize if we have oversold that in some way, shape, or form, but that may be the point of contention here.
Okay. I have two other questions. So how would prioritization work in practice? So if a building owner who is later in the kind of preferential list contacts you, would they get serviced? Alternatively, could we earmark certain funds toward what we've considered a preferred category, such as multifamily or nonprofits, versus making the whole amount available to all of these categories with a preference?
Yeah, I might see if Perry can help in terms of capacity-wise, but I anticipate that I think our real focus would be on that outreach marketing at the beginning towards these certain building types that we've identified as priority and trying to get them in early. I think if someone were to come in late, that we would still have the capacity to be able to support them, and we'll make sure that that's a priority for our service provider so they know to move those folks up early if that's the desire of council. In terms of earmarking, I think that's also a potential, open to those suggestions. That's not something that I had considered or recommended in the packet, but completely open to that as well.
Okay, and then the last question there. Could a building in Issaquah, if we didn't pass something like this, contact McDonald Miller or a similar provider to get an audit and pursue energy efficiency upgrades without these incentives?
Without this type of program, or yes, they could, and they're required to, for those that are required under state law to go through this process. I think the concern is that many don't know about the law and the requirements. They don't know how to navigate the process or how to access the incentives before they're gone. I think the other value of this program that we talked about with committee is we'd be reaching out to those buildings that aren't required to come into compliance, and so really expanding our scope to support buildings and helping us meet our reduction targets.
Deputy Council President?
Oh, thank you. Was the program in Bellevue, did it start out as a pilot as well, or was it just a full program?
It was approved by City Council. In the case of Bellevue, they allocated $250,000, and it was an official program. So we were selected as the consultant for the City of Bellevue to perform these services on behalf of the city. One of the things, I'll just kind of embellish a little bit if I may, is there exists today a serious void for building owners to understand what their obligations are. And what we found, and that's kind of consistent across the state, And we're still even seeing voids in Bellevue after 6 months worth of intense effort at getting the word out. What we have seen, though, as evident by the numbers I shared with you previously, is the fact that because it's an endorsed program by the city of Bellevue that is out there trying to do the outreach and education and also provide services at the building owner's discretion, that it's having an effect on the number of people that we're able to reach and communicate their obligations with the legislation. So that's why I was so happy to see that the city of Issaquah is endeavoring into a similar type of initiative, and there's other cities we're working with doing the same thing, because with that kind of outreach, we're able to just enable the service providers such as McDonald Miller in the community to engage with these building owners in a more meaningful way. Department of Commerce, and another kind of a correction for the record, if you don't mind, the Department of Commerce is the jurisdiction responsible for enforcement and compliance with the Clean Building Standard legislation. The other entity, state entity, is Department of Enterprise Services, which manages the Energy Services Performance Contracting Program for the state. So the Department of Enterprise Services would be the entity that public entities in the state can contract with through an interagency agreement to select an energy services provider from the qualified list. So two different agencies at the state level managing two different programs.
Thank you for that clarification. Deputy Council President, followed by Councilmember DiMichele.
Thanks. And my second question was, Stacey, can you walk us back through, so the slide that you had on the proposal, the details of the proposal, can you walk us back through what the city's role is and what the city's actions will be in terms of what city staff will be accomplishing as opposed to our contractor?
Yeah, I think the real focus for city staff would be in that first step, the marketing and outreach, where city funds would also come into play, although probably not significant staff time, is in the scoping assessments. That's where for the priority buildings, the nonprofit buildings, we would cover the cost of those scoping assessments. And I think they range $3,000 to $5,000 approximately, depending on the building size.
Councilmember DiMichele.
Thanks. This is for either one of you. You alluded, Stacey, to that the proposal in front of us has improved somewhat on the Bellevue pilot or program, and you said something about including nonprofits. So would you just go a little deeper with that and explain some of the issues that were raised in Bellevue, and then how this proposal is different, or at least grapples with those issues?
Yeah, and I absolutely don't want to discount the Bellevue program. It is a great program. They have a lot of buildings they are working with that have to come into compliance. I think the opportunity here is we don't have quite as large a scope of buildings that have to come into compliance. So we have an opportunity for that more targeted outreach based on the feedback from the committee to work with the buildings that might have more of a challenge coming into compliance or going through the process. So I think that's one opportunity, is that more targeted outreach. And then the other is to go beyond the buildings that have to come into compliance, and that we can really offer up this program to any building owner that's ready to make energy efficiency upgrades, and actually target messaging to encourage them to do so. So I think that's where there's the opportunity, just with our smaller size, that we can have that real targeted approach and a little bit broader scope. And I did want to just note, referring to this as a pilot, as we anticipate as the rulemaking's completed for the buildings that are in the 20,000 to 50,000 range, that the need for this program would likely only increase. And that's why we'd want to take this first year or so to really assess the success and failures, and see where we can make improvements as we expand that scope to smaller buildings as well as multifamily requirements.
Thank you.
Councilmember Ray.
Thank you. I'm going to build a little bit on where Deputy Council President Hall was going, I think. So this is my understanding of what the city is going to do, so tell me where I go astray here. So we've got an outreach component, and we can target that outreach to our high priority building owners so that we're focused more there. Is that the thinking around how we would do outreach and how the prioritization would come into that?
Yeah, I think real targeted outreach through cold calls, direct mailings, through workshops, offering up, marketing.
And then the other thing that we as the city might do is provide assistance in accessing the early adopter incentive program and the application. Is that also where you think we would fit into this puzzle?
Yes, I mean, the program itself would be sponsored by the city in partnership with the service provider. So the actual city staff time would really focus on that marketing, and then funding beyond staff time would focus on paying for some of those energy scoping studies. But really, this program overall would be packaged as a partnership with the service provider to really show the city's support for helping go through these steps.
So just to build on that, we would be paying the service provider to do some of these tasks for our building owners.
Yes, with the, and Perry can correct me, the Bellevue program, the city dollars are contributing a small amount towards the marketing, and then there's some city staff time, and then the city dollars are paying for those scoping studies. The service provider, McDonald Miller, in the case of Bellevue, is actually covering the cost of the other aspects of the program.
Okay. Beyond the scoping study.
Correct.
Got it. So we could target our dollars for scoping studies based on our priorities too, right?
Yes.
And I think
Yes,
that goes to the question that came up around, kind of earmarks or set-asides or something like that.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, got it. And that was actually my last question you just answered before I got to it. And then kind of building on that, then the service provider, whoever that might be, would be doing some additional work at risk with the potential of some follow-on business around actually doing the improvements and enhancements and remediations.
Yes.
That's the business model, the way it looks like. Okay.
Yes, and I'll look to Perry. I don't want to
Yes.
speak differently for the
Yes,
Bellevue
that
program,
is
but
correct.
yeah.
Okay, so the big things then are outreach, scoping, and assistance with the application, where we would fund a service provider to help make some of that happen.
Yes.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct, yes.
I do get it.
Thank you. Perry, I'm going to let you sit down. We'll see if it comes up for any more questions, but I'm just going to chime in right now, and I want to say that what McDonald Miller is doing in this field is really fantastic. I mean, I think we've heard that these are lost leaders in some cases, but the benefits of some of these bigger buildings are retrofitted sooner rather than later is an amazing gift in reducing greenhouse gases. So very excited about the work you're doing and recognizing it's a lost leader in some cases for you.
Appreciate that, Mayor.
And if we still need Perry or anyone else to come back up, we will. Are there additional questions? I'm going to look to the chair to see if there's a motion.
Yes, I move to approve the additional appropriation of $20,000 from the sustainability funds for the Clean Building Initiative in 2022 and an additional budget allocation of $80,000 in 2023.
Second?
So second, I have a question for the city clerk. That's different than the motion I have.
I was reading the motion off the
Okay.
thing. I can retract my motion and pull up the other motion.
Okay, do you want to hand that to her? Just do that.
It's coming in both directions.
It's going everywhere. Sorry about that.
I got it.
Paper version back to the
All right,
producer.
do I need to formally do, okay, thank you. I move to direct the Chief Financial Officer to include an appropriation of $20,000 from the Sustainability Funds for the Clean Building Initiative in a subsequent 2022 budget amendment, and direct the administration to include $80,000 for the Clean Building Initiative in the proposed 2023 budget for a total commitment of $100,000 for the Clean Building Initiative to be expended in 2022 and 2023.
Second.
Councilmember Ray. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there council discussion? Oh, sure. Let's start with the motion maker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate the changes that have been made to this, especially in the prioritization area, since this was seen by the Planning Development Environment Committee. I think that from our conversation, we did recommend a number of changes to that prioritization, and in my opinion, they are reflected in the changes that were made. The reason for those changes is really to try to target those building owners that are going to go above and beyond, and looking at those buildings that don't have to come into compliance by entering into this program at all. They're going above and beyond. So we wanted to make sure that we were supporting those buildings, those building owners, and that the prioritization reflected that as an emphasis. We also wanted to, in terms of thinking through our role as government, I think it was also important to support those buildings that especially needed to have this, and because there are other options for them to come into compliance, and they will be required to come into compliance with the state law. So I think the financial hardship, I am interested to see how that works, because I think it will be a bit of an administrative challenge to identify those, but I do think that reflects what the committee was hoping to go for in terms of prioritizing the outreach. I think there will be some real challenges assessing this program, because we won't know what would have happened had we not had the program at the end of the day. That said, 5 to 10% of Issaquah's emissions for $100,000 is a big impact, and so it would potentially be a really big emission saving, and that benefits the entire community. And this is a pilot. We will see how it does. It's $100,000. I'm interested to seeing how it does. It does have big potential, and I also look forward to hearing how this builds relationships with the business community, because I think the success of the climate action plan, the success of our efforts in climate action really do rely on building relationships with the business community, and I would love for this program to be a way to build those bridges. So for those reasons, I am supportive. I understand and relate to the concerns of Council President Walsh in terms of the municipal buildings. I think that's, for me, that's not why I would support the pilot. It is this potential for building these bridges with the business community, and then using those bridges as we continue to do climate action in the future and implement the climate action plan in the future. So for those reasons, I will be supporting this, and again, appreciate all the work that went into this by this staff. Thank you.
Councilmember Reyes, second, did you want to have comments? Because we have a couple more that want to speak.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for letting me jump the line without getting my microphone raised. I have just 3 points I wanted to make. One is, I think this is an opportunity to improve energy efficiency and reduce our carbon emissions in our city by 3 to 5 years, depending upon the size of the building. So I think there's an inherent benefit to pushing forward with this and getting people to start, or building owners start making changes now prior to when they have to because of state law. I also think it's good for us to be able to assist building owners, particularly in the not-for-profit sector or ones that are struggling, to access the early adopter funds, so that they will be able to make those changes. And then my final point is, I think we still have to solve, without a doubt, for the municipal buildings, but I think that's going to be part of actually a lot larger and bigger and bolder discussion. So I'm thinking this is great. And to echo Councilmember Hunt, I think the administration did a nice job of hearing what was said in committee and bringing it back here. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember DiMichele, and then Council President Walsh.
Thank you so much. I will be supporting this as well. We were in retreat on Saturday, and I think we heard really clearly that we are feeling like it's very urgent and appropriate for us to be accelerating our Issaquah Climate Action Plan. And I think that this does that very, very nicely. It was really nice to see this on the agenda in connection with that discussion as well. So first of all, the urgency, I think, is manifest, and this helps us move forward. It was alluded to, and I agree with my fellow council members, that I think if there's any sector in Issaquah that's been skeptical of the Climate Action Plan, it's been the business community. And I think this practically helps businesses understand, but also sends a message to our business community that we want to be partners on this, and that everyone in Issaquah has a role in implementing the climate action plan, and we want to be partners with everybody in our community. So I think it'll be good on many different levels in terms of our relationship with the business sector. I was very interested in the nonprofits and especially the churches. Our churches have these great big spaces that are really difficult to heat and probably emit a lot of carbon into the environment. So I'm really glad that they're going to be involved, and they are also probably some of the organizations that will have the hardest time affording an assessment and affording the conversions. But to include them, I think, is a really, really good thing, and including them in the outreach will be excellent. So overall, I just think this is a great proposal, and I will also be supporting it. Thank you.
Council President?
Thank you. I come to this with a little bit of frustration and skepticism. This came on the same night that we were also considering the heat pump incentives for low-income households. And that one checked everything on my list. That one said, okay, we're helping low-income households who can't afford this, whereas this is targeting business owners and building owners. Similarly, in that situation, we're guaranteeing that a change is being made because we're paying to do the installation of these heat pumps, and we're going at it knowing that those buildings are underperforming, and we are making a contribution that directly impacts the amount of greenhouse gas that they produce, whereas in this case, we don't have that guarantee. It's really nice to hear that most of the buildings are pushing through, because one of my early concerns was we're going to pay for audits and assessments and then not necessarily get anything out of it. My third difference between these ones, in those low-income housing situations, they have very little reason and no compliance deadline that they have to go to. And in these cases, there is a state requirement. Additionally, there are no other incentives out there because the PSE conversion or incentive only happens on moving from, I think, electric to electric, not gas to electric, which is our situation. Whereas here, there's an early adopter incentive of $75 million, which goes way above and beyond what our $100,000 here goes into. So I don't like some of the things about this program. I would much rather put money into making improvements on our own municipal buildings or doing other low-income multifamily heat pump incentives. So I would encourage the administration to move toward that. That being said, I think you have provided some good reasons why this as a pilot program can provide us with some good benefits. It's a low dollar amount in the scheme of things. And so I will ultimately support it with the hope that we can take opportunities to look at other areas where we have more direct impact, either in making changes of our own or helping those who really truly can't afford it and don't have a requirement to do so in the near future. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, I will reread the motion. Direct the Chief Financial Officer to include an appropriation of $20,000 from the Sustainability Fund for the Clean Building Initiative in a subsequent 2022 budget amendment, and direct the administration to include $80,000 for the Clean Building Initiative in the proposed 2023 budget, for a total commitment of $100,000 for the Clean Building Initiative to be expended in 2022 and 2023. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you, Stacy, and thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming in tonight and explaining some of the practical aspects of the work you're doing in our sister city next door, Bellevue. Thank you. The next item of business is the good of the order. There are a couple of upcoming council meetings. August 1st, the regular city council meeting has some anticipated agenda items. The amendments to Title 16 with respect to Stormwater Manual and Floodplain Code. August 8th, Committee of the Whole Council meeting. Anticipated agenda items include the 2023-24 budget, the revenue forecast, and mid-year update. And there is anticipated to be an executive session. Any other items? Council President, followed by Council Member Joe.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a moment as the host of, or co-host of our budget retreat on Saturday to just thank the council for some great participation. I think we had a really good meeting. I'm looking forward to what comes from the administration, and gosh, all the feedback that we got from the administration as well during that budget retreat. So I just wanted to thank everyone for coming prepared, for being open to conversations, and for the outputs that we received off of that. So thank you.
Councilmember Joe, followed by Deputy Council President.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick announcement that the Sound Cities Association Social is on 7/27, 27th of July, 6 to 8 p.m. in Maple Valley. If you would like to join us for that, that'd be great. I think I'm going if you'd like to carpool.
Good offer. Good green offer there. Deputy Council President?
Thanks very much. I just wanted to bring up welcoming back our returning board and commission meetings in person. I want to thank everyone who has replied to our emails about joining those meetings. We do have people now going to all the July in-person board and commission meetings. We have one on August 10th that we're looking for a volunteer for. That's the environmental board. But other than that, the remaining meetings are in September, so we've got some time to figure out if anyone else would like to go and help us welcome back board and commissions. I sent out an update to that email today if you have any interest in participating in that, or if you'd like to see what is still available. And for those of you who have signed up already, I sent out calendar invitations with the location and all of that earlier today, so that should be on your calendar now. Thank you very much for volunteering. And if you have any questions, feel free to let us know. Thanks.
Are there any additional comments for good of the order? Okay. The next item on our agenda is executive session, but we will not be holding one this evening, and so we are adjourned at 8:46.